What if the whispers of the past never truly fade? What if the stories our ancestors told by firelight stories, meant to warn, to terrify, to explain the unexplainable, still linger in the shadows, waiting to be heard? Across time and continents, every ancient culture has its own collection of eerie legends, tales so unsettling they've survived centuries, even millennia. These aren't just ghost stories, they're fragments of belief, echoes of primal fears, and sometimes chilling warnings carved into history itself. Today, we're stepping into that darkness to uncover 25 of the creepiest legends from ancient cultures, stories that will make you question what's real, what's myth, and what might still be out there watching. Think about the last time you felt a shiver down your spine, the kind that doesn't come from the cold. Maybe it was a rustle in the trees when no wind was blowing, or a glimpse of something in the corner of your eye that vanished when you turned to look. Now imagine that feeling magnified by centuries of retelling, woven into the fabric of entire civilizations. These legends weren't just entertainment, they were explanations for the inexplicable: why children vanished near certain rivers, why certain ruins were never rebuilt, why some names were whispered only in fear. From the fog-shrouded forests of Europe to the sun-baked ruins of Mesopotamia, every culture has its own monsters, its own curses, its own ghosts that refuse to rest. And here's the thing, these stories stick around for a reason. They tap into something deep and universal, a fear of the unknown that transcends time. Whether it's the vengeful spirits of Japan's feudal past or the shape-shifting horrors of Native American folklore, these legends resonate because they speak to the darkest corners of our imagination. So as we journey through these 25 chilling tales, keep one question in mind. Are these just stories, or could there be a grain of truth hidden in their shadows? By the end, you might just find yourself listening a little closer to the sounds of the night, wondering what ancient secrets might still be lurking just out of sight. The story begins in the Valley of the Kings, where the sands of Egypt guard secrets older than memory. When Howard Carter and his team pried open the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922, they weren't just uncovering gold and artifacts, they were waking something far darker. Within months of the discovery, those who'd entered the burial chamber began dying under mysterious circumstances. Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, succumbed to an infected mosquito bite mere weeks after the tomb was breached. Others followed, a radiologist who x-rayed the mummy, a secretary who catalogued the finds, even Carnarvon's dog howling in the night before dropping dead. Newspapers across the globe seized on the legend, dubbing it the Curse of the Pharaohs, a warning inscribed on clay tablets outside the tomb. Death shall come on swift wings to those who disturb the rest of the king. But here's where history twists into something stranger. While modern scholars dismiss the curse as coincidence or sensationalism, the pattern of tragedies is hard to ignore. Was it really just bad luck, or could there have been something more sinister at work? Some scientists suggest ancient pathogens sealed for millennia might have infected the explorers. Others point to psychological dread, the power of suggestion magnified by the tomb's eerie isolation. Yet the most chilling theory comes from Egyptian priests themselves, who allegedly laced burial sites with toxic molds and poisons to punish grave robbers. Imagine breathing in air untouched for 3,000 years, thick with spores meant to defend the dead. The curse endures because it taps into something primal, the fear of crossing boundaries we don't understand. Tutankhamun wasn't just a boy king, he was a god in mortal form, and his rest was sacred. Disturbing that rest, the legend implies, invites wrath beyond human comprehension. Even today, with our science and skepticism, the story lingers like desert wind through broken tombs. Maybe curses aren't real, but then again, why do we still whisper about them in the dark? From the sands of Egypt to the candlelit synagogues of Eastern Europe, the terror takes a different shape, one that doesn't haunt tombs but the living themselves. In Jewish folklore, few spirits are as feared as the Dybbuk, a restless soul so consumed by sin or unfinished business that it claws its way back into the world by possessing the bodies of the living. Unlike ghosts who linger in places, the Dybbuk seeks out victims, twisting their voices, contorting their limbs, and whispering secrets only the dead should know. Rooted in Kabbalistic mysticism, this isn't just a story, it's a warning about the dangers of unresolved evil and the fragility of the human soul. One of the most harrowing accounts comes from 17th century Poland, where a young bride named Lee suddenly began speaking in the guttural voice of a long-dead merchant. According to witnesses, she recited details of his life, debts he'd hidden, crimes he'd committed, all while her body convulsed as if gripped by invisible hands. Rabbis performed the ancient rite of exorcism, surrounding her with shofar blasts, psalms, and the scent of burning sage. The ritual, documented in crumbling parchment, describes how the Dybbuk fought back, hurling objects and cursing in languages Lee had never learned. Only when the rabbis invoked sacred names did the spirit finally shriek and flee, leaving Lee collapsed and gasping, her wedding gown soaked in sweat. What makes the Dybbuk so unsettling isn't just its brutality, but what it represents. In Jewish tradition, possession isn't random, it's a consequence. The Dybbuk targets those with spiritual vulnerabilities, often people burdened by guilt or unresolved trauma. It's a mirror held up to the community's deepest fears, that sin can fester beyond the grave, that the past can reach out and strangle the present. Even the exorcism rituals, with their incense and incantations, reflect a meticulous balance between divine power and human frailty. Every step, from the tying of red strings around the victim's wrists to the chanting of the 91st Psalm, is a battle fought on two fronts, against the spirit and against the doubt that gnaws at even the most faithful. Modern scholars debate whether these accounts were cases of mental illness, mass hysteria, or something far older. But the Dybbuk's legacy endures, seeping into art, literature, and even psychology. Freud himself drew parallels between possession and repressed memories, suggesting that these legends give form to the things we bury deep within ourselves. Perhaps that's why the Dybbuk still chills us today, not because we fear possession, but because we recognize the darker parts of our own souls, waiting for a moment of weakness to rise. There's a sound that chills the blood in villages from Mexico to Texas, a sound that has sent children running indoors for centuries. It starts as a whisper, then rises into a wail so full of grief it could crack stone. They say if you hear it by the river, it's already too late. La Llorona, the weeping woman, is near. Her story begins long before the Spanish conquistadors arrived, rooted in the Aztec mother goddess Cihuacotl. Cloaked in white, she was said to wander the streets of Tenochtitlan at night, weeping for her lost children, a harbinger of war and disaster. But when indigenous beliefs collided with colonial fears, her legend twisted into something far darker. The tale varies from village to village, but the heart remains the same. A beautiful woman, betrayed or abandoned, drowns her own children in a fit of madness or vengeance. When she realizes what she's done, her grief is so immense that the gods refuse her entry into the afterlife. Now she wanders riverbanks for eternity, dragging other children into the depths, mistaking them for her own. In some versions, she wears a soaked wedding dress, her skeletal fingers clutching the reeds. In others, she's faceless, her cries echoing even when her lips don't move. Parents in Latin America still warn their children, don't go near the water at night or La Llorona will take you. What makes her legend so enduring isn't just the horror, it's the tragedy. Unlike monsters who kill for sport, La Llorona is a figure of unbearable sorrow, a mother condemned by her own actions. She's a cautionary tale about rage and regret, but also a darker reflection of colonial pain. Some scholars trace her evolution to the trauma of conquest, where indigenous women saw their children torn away by violence or disease. Her cries aren't just for two lost boys, they're for generations. Modern sightings still surface, Fishermen along the Rio Grande report hearing sobs in the fog. Backpackers claim to see a woman in white vanishing near bridges, her dress dripping with black water. Even urban areas aren't safe. In Mexico City, taxi drivers swap stories of picking up a weeping passenger who disappears before reaching her destination. The legend has seeped into films, songs, and even political discourse, a ghostly reminder of wounds that never quite heal. So the next time you hear the wind howl like a woman's cry, ask yourself, is it just the air moving through the trees, or is it something older, something that remembers when gods walked the earth and mothers became monsters? Either way, you might want to step back from the water's edge just in case. Now imagine a creature that doesn't just lurk in the shadows, it walks among us wearing the face of someone you trust. In the Philippines, few legends strike as deep a chord of terror as the Aswang, a shape-shifting predator as cunning as it is cruel. By day, it might be your neighbor, the quiet fruit vendor, or even the midwife who delivered your child. But when the sun sets, its skin splits open, revealing something monstrous. With its long, hollow tongue and eyes that gleam like embers in the dark, the Aswang doesn't just kill, it feasts. This isn't some distant bogeyman. The Aswang is deeply woven into the fabric of Filipino oral tradition, a cautionary tale passed down through generations. It preys on the vulnerable, particularly pregnant women and the unborn, slipping into homes at night to drain life from its victims without waking them. Some say it uses its proboscis-like tongue to siphon blood or fetuses, leaving behind only a husk of flesh. Others describe it lurking near coconut trees, mimicking the sound of a falling branch to lure the curious into its grasp. What makes it especially terrifying is its ability to blend in. Unlike European vampires, the Aswang doesn't recoil from garlic or crosses. It hides in plain sight, thriving on deception. Communities developed elaborate rituals to ward it off. Salt and garlic might line doorways, not as repellents but as traps. The Aswang is compelled to count every grain or clove, buying time until sunrise. Mirrors were placed near windows as the creature supposedly couldn't bear to see its true reflection. Some villagers buried their dead face down, hoping to confuse the Aswang if it came digging. But the most chilling defense, the buntot poggy, a stingray's tail whip, believed to cripple the creature if struck across its back. The Aswang's influence stretches far beyond folklore. It's become a metaphor for real-world fears of betrayal, of unseen threats lurking within society. During the Spanish colonial era, tales of Aswang surged, some scholars argue, as coded resistance against oppressive rulers. Today, it's a staple of Filipino horror cinema, from low-budget shake, rattle, and roll films to internationally acclaimed movies like Tick, The Aswang Chronicles. Even modern true crime stories sometimes borrow its imagery, with serial killers dubbed Aswangs by the media. Yet the legend persists in whispers. In rural provinces, you'll still find elders who swear by their encounters, pointing to livestock drained of blood or strange figures perched on rooftops at dusk. Whether myth or metaphor, the Aswang taps into something universal. The fear that the greatest dangers don't come from outside, but from the person standing beside you, smiling in the daylight while hiding teeth sharpened for the night. There's a certain kind of cold that doesn't just settle in your bones, it whispers to you. In the heart of a Japanese winter, when the world turns to silence under blankets of snow, that's when she appears. Yuki-onna, the snow woman, is a vision of eerie perfection. Skin like freshly fallen powder, lips the pale blue of a winter twilight, and a voice that carries the hush of a frozen breeze. She drifts through storms without footprints, her long black hair trailing behind her like ink spilled on parchment. To the lost traveler, she might seem like salvation, a lone figure offering warmth, a flicker of light in the endless white. But her embrace is death itself. Her origins are as layered as the snow she commands. Some say she's the spirit of a woman who perished in the cold, her anguish so vast it bound her to the frozen world forever. Others believe she's older than human memory, a primordial force of winter given form. In Edo period folktales, she's both predator and poet, stealing breath from the lips of the living with a kiss, yet sometimes sparing those who move her, like the woodcutter in Lafcadio Hearn's Quaden, who survives only because her hollow eyes soften at the sight of his young children. This duality is what makes her legend so haunting. She isn't mindless evil, she's winter incarnate, beautiful and unforgiving, as capricious as a blizzard. Artists have tried to capture her for centuries. Yuki-onna prints depict her as a spectral bride, her kimono dissolving into snowfall, while modern manga like GGG no Kitaro reimagines her with a melancholic grace. But no rendering can quite replicate the terror of encountering her in the wild. Villagers in Tohoku still tell of travelers found frozen solid, their faces oddly serene as if they'd welcomed their end. Some claim she leaves no mark but a faint dusting of frost on the eyelashes, nature's final caress. What lingers long after her tale is told isn't just the fear of cold or darkness, but the unsettling truth she embodies, that beauty and lethality often walk hand in hand. The same snow that paints the world in stillness can bury it without remorse. So the next time you find yourself alone in a winter landscape and the wind sounds almost like a woman singing, ask yourself, do you really want to follow that voice? Or is it better to keep walking, no matter how heavy your steps become, until you find the firelight waiting on the other side? The howl that split the night in rural Puerto Rico wasn't just another animal sound, it was something far more unnatural. Farmers awoke to find their livestock drained of blood, puncture wounds neatly spaced on their necks, bodies eerily intact. By dawn, the name Chupacabra was on everyone's lips, the goat sucker, a creature straight out of nightmares. Unlike ancient legends with centuries of lore, this terror exploded into global consciousness in the mid-1990s, a product of mass hysteria, political tension, and something far older lurking beneath the surface. Eyewitnesses described a reptilian monster with leathery skin, glowing red eyes, and a row of spines down its back, a description that morphed over time, influenced by everything from Hollywood aliens to misidentified mangy coyotes. But the Chupacabra's power wasn't in its appearance, it was in what it represented. For an island grappling with economic instability and U.S. military occupation, the creature became a physical manifestation of unseen forces draining the life from the land. Rumors spread that it was a genetic experiment gone wrong, a government conspiracy, or even a demon summoned by dark magic. Now, cross the Atlantic to Namibia's arid plains, where a different terror soars above the dunes. The flying snake is no ordinary reptile. It's said to launch itself from cliffs, gliding on rib-like extensions with a hiss that paralyzes prey. Indigenous San people have whispered about it for generations, calling it Gamab, a harbinger of drought and misfortune. Unlike the Chupacabra's sudden fame, this legend is woven into the fabric of survival, a warning to respect the delicate balance between humans and the harsh desert. What makes these two cryptids so fascinating isn't just their biology or lack thereof, but how they mirror the fears of their cultures. The Chupacabra thrives in modernity, evolving with each news cycle and photoshopped image, while the flying snake remains timeless, a relic of oral tradition passed down under star-filled skies. Yet both share a chilling purpose: to explain the unexplainable. When cattle die mysteriously in Puerto Rico, it's easier to blame a monster than admit to disease or neglect. When drought scorches Namibia, the flying snake becomes a scapegoat for nature's cruelty. Maps of sightings tell their own story. The Chupacabra's appearances cluster around rural towns, often near military bases or ecological disaster zones, fueling theories of toxic waste mutations. The flying snake's territory, meanwhile, traces ancient migration routes, appearing near sacred sites or water sources. Both creatures are liminal, existing on the edges of human understanding, in places where the veil between the natural and supernatural feels thin. So the next time you hear about a strange beast in the news or around a campfire, ask yourself, are we inventing monsters to make sense of our own chaos? Or is there a sliver of truth in these tales, something science hasn't caught up to yet? Either way, the dark still holds its secrets, and maybe that's the most terrifying thing of all. There's a scream that cuts through the misty hills of Ireland, a sound so piercing it chills the blood before the mind even registers what it means. They call her the banshee, a spectral woman whose wail is not just a warning of death, but an omen reserved for the oldest and noblest of Celtic families. Unlike other spirits who haunt places, she haunts bloodlines, her voice weaving through generations like a thread of sorrow. Her origins are as tangled as the roots of Ireland's oldest oaks, tied to the ancient tradition of keening, where women would sing laments for the dead at funerals. But the banshee doesn't mourn, she announces, her cry echoing through the night hours before a soul is claimed. Some say she appears as a withered crone in tattered grave clothes, her hair silver as moonlight, her eyes hollow with centuries of grief. Others describe a radiant young woman, beautiful but for the sorrow twisting her features, washing blood-stained linen in a river, a grim foreshadowing of the shroud to come. The O'Briens, the O'Connors, the O'Neills, these are the families bound to her legend, their histories marked by her visits. In 1877, a servant in County Limerick swore he saw her crouched on the manor's stone wall, her mouth open in a silent scream moments before the Lord's son tumbled from his horse and broke his neck. Another account from 1923 tells of a family gathering interrupted by unearthly wails outside. By dawn, the eldest daughter was dead of a fever no doctor could explain. The banshee's influence didn't fade with the crumbling of castles. Gothic literature seized upon her, transforming her into a symbol of doomed aristocracy. Bram Stoker wove her into Dracula's Guest, where her howls foreshadow tragedy, while modern horror films depict her as a vengeful spirit, her screams shattering glass and eardrums alike. Yet the most haunting versions remain the local tales passed down in hushed tones. In rural Kerry, they'll tell you the banshee doesn't always scream, sometimes she sings. A lullaby so sweet it lulls the dying into their final sleep, her voice the last comfort they'll ever know. What lingers isn't just the fear of her cry, but the eerie intimacy of it. The banshee doesn't come for strangers, she comes for your family, your name. She's a reminder that some bonds don't end with death, they echo through time, carried on a wind that smells of damp earth and funeral flowers. So if you ever find yourself in Ireland and hear a sound like a woman sobbing in the distance, don't look for her. Just hold your loved ones close and pray the morning comes without news. In the flickering lantern light of old China, when the night grew too quiet and the shadows too long, people would nail wooden planks across their doors, not just to keep out thieves, but something far worse. The jiangshi, China's infamous hopping vampire, is a monster unlike any other. Stiff-limbed and rigor mortis straight, it moves with eerie, mechanical jumps, arms outstretched, its talon-like nails seeking the breath of the living. Unlike the shambling corpses of Western lore, this creature isn't mindless. It's a soul trapped between worlds, its body reanimated by unbalanced energies, cursed to drain the life force, the kai from the unsuspecting. The legend springs from Taoist beliefs about the sanctity of death. When a soul can't move on due to improper burial, violent demise, or unfinished business, its corpse might rise, fueled by yin energy. Funeral rites were sacred for a reason. Mirrors were covered to prevent spirits from getting trapped, and white paper coins scattered to appease restless ghosts. But if a body was left unattended or a vengeful spell cast, the result was a jiangshi, a creature clad in tattered Qing dynasty robes, its skin greenish-gray, its eyes milky and unblinking. What makes the jiangshi uniquely terrifying isn't just its appearance, but how it moves. Early accounts describe it hopping because rigor mortis prevents bending its knees, but Taoist texts suggest a darker reason. It's drawn forward by the pull of its own unfinished fate, like a puppet on invisible strings. To stop one, you'd need more than a stake or holy water. Taoist priests wielded spells written in cinnabar ink, chanting to disperse the corrupted energy. Villagers hung bags of rice or beans at their thresholds. The jiangshi would compulsively count each grain before entering, buying time until dawn. Some tales even claim sticking a yellow talisman to its forehead could freeze it mid-hop, a trick immortalized in countless films. Speaking of films, the jiangshi's evolution from horror to humor is fascinating. By the 20th century, the creature became a staple of Hong Kong cinema, hopping comically to synth-heavy soundtracks in movies like Mr. Vampire. These portrayals softened its image, turning it into a slapstick figure with bouncing eyebrows and a goofy gait. Yet the original fear lingers. Rural communities still share stories of grave robbers struck dumb after encountering something stiff and silent in the moonlight. And in bustling cities, you might still find elders who refuse to whistle at night. It's said the sound attracts hungry spirits, their hollow mouths gaping in the dark. So the next time you see a zombie in pop culture, remember, not all undead are created equal. Some shuffle, some sprint, and some hop with the weight of 1,000 unspoken regrets. Just hope you never hear the sound of bamboo creaking under something that shouldn't be moving at all. Deep in the pine forests of the northern wilderness, where winter winds howl like something alive, the Algonquian tribes tell of a hunger that never ends. The Wendigo isn't just a monster, it's a warning carved into the bones of the land itself. Born from desperation, from the unthinkable act of turning to cannibalism in times of famine, the Wendigo is the embodiment of consumption without limit. Its skeletal frame, stretched too thin over jagged bones, towers above the tree line, antlers scraping the sky. But its most horrifying feature, the lips chewed ragged, forever bleeding, because no matter how much it devours human flesh, animals, even the very trees, it's never enough. This isn't just a ghost story. For the Algonquian, the Wendigo is a sacred caution against greed and excess, a mirror held up to the darkest corners of human nature. To even speak its name risks inviting its attention, which is why elders often referred to it indirectly, that which gnaws. Some legends say it was once human, cursed after resorting to eating the dead during a brutal winter. Others claim it's an ancient spirit lurking since time began, waiting for moments of weakness. Regardless, the message is clear: stray too far from balance and you might not recognize what you become. Now shift south to the sun-baked mesas of the Navajo Nation, where the air itself feels alive with whispers. Here, the danger doesn't come from hunger, it comes from betrayal. The Skinwalker, or Yi-Noldlushii, is a different kind of nightmare. Unlike the Wendigo, born of necessity, the Skinwalker is a choice, a witch who has gained the power to shapeshift by committing the ultimate taboo, the murder of a family member. Cloaked in the pelts of wolves, coyotes, or bears, it moves unseen among the living, eyes glowing yellow in the firelight. But it's not the transformation that chills the blood, it's the uncanny way it wears these skins. The way a skinwalker's human hands might still twitch beneath the paws of a wolf, or how its laughter sounds just a little too human when it mimics an animal's cry. Navajo tradition treats skinwalkers with a reverence bordering on terror. To speak of them openly is to risk retaliation, which is why many refuse to discuss them outside of sacred context. Protective rituals involve sprinkling corn pollen or ash around hogans, or refusing to look directly at something moving unnaturally in the dark. Modern accounts persist, from ranchers finding livestock with surgical precision, wounds to hitchhikers vanishing near remote roads after encountering a figure that walked just wrong. What ties these two horrors together isn't just their roots in indigenous lore, it's their role as living taboos. The Wendigo punishes those who abandon community for selfish survival. The Skinwalker preys on those who pervert sacred knowledge for power. Both serve as reminders that some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed, and in an age where forests are cleared for profit and ancient rituals are diluted for curiosity, their legends feel less like campfire tales and more like urgent, echoing warnings. So the next time you're alone in the woods and hear branches snap where nothing moves, ask yourself, is it just the wind? Or is it something older, hungrier, waiting to see if you'll take that first step into the dark? In the humid, clove-scented nights of the Malay archipelago, there's a sound that sends villagers bolting their doors, a high, keening wail like a woman's scream twisted into something inhuman. That's the cry of the Pontianak, a vengeful spirit born from the agony of women who died in childbirth, their rage so potent it refuses to settle even in death. Cloaked in tattered white robes, her long black hair matted with the blood of her unfinished life, she drifts through banana groves and mangrove swamps, her presence marked by the sudden sweetness of rotting frangipani flowers. But don't mistake her for a mere ghost. The Pontianak is a predator, her sharpened nails and elongated canine teeth designed for one purpose, to tear into the men who wronged her or any man unlucky enough to cross her path. Her origins are steeped in the region's complex history. Before Islam and Hinduism took root, indigenous animist beliefs spoke of orang bunyan, spirits of the dead tied to untimely or violent ends. The Pontianak emerged as a crystallization of these fears, specifically targeting the vulnerabilities surrounding childbirth, a time when mortality rates were once devastatingly high. Folklorists suggest her legend served dual purposes, as a cautionary tale for husbands to treat pregnant wives with care, and as an explanation for sudden, inexplicable deaths in the jungle. When a traveler was found with his chest cavity hollowed out or a newborn vanished from its crib, the blame fell on her. Yet the Pontianak isn't mindless in her vengeance. Traditional appeasement rituals reveal layers of nuance. In some villages, families would place needles and threads near a grave suspected of housing her spirit, a symbolic gesture to so shut her restless rage. Others offered dolls wrapped in white cloth, representing the child she never held, hoping to soothe her anguish. The most chilling method, driving a nail into the back of her neck, said to temporarily restore her humanity. These acts weren't just superstition. They mirrored societal attempts to reconcile with the trauma of maternal mortality, transforming grief into something tangible, something that could, at least in stories, be controlled. Cinema catapulted the Pontianak from local folklore to regional icon. Singapore's Cathay Keras Studios unleashed a wave of Pontianak films in the 1950s and 60s, blending traditional mythology with vibrant Technicolor horror. These movies portrayed her as both monster and tragic figure, often revealing the human story behind her curse. Modern interpretations, like the 2019 film Pontianak, reimagine her as a feminist avenger, her violence reframed as retribution against patriarchal oppression. The trope persists because it's adaptable. She's a mirror for societal fears, whether about female autonomy, colonial displacement, or the lingering scars of history. But the Pontianak's true power lies in her contradictions. She's a mother and a murderer, a victim and a villain. Her screams aren't just warnings, they're the echo of every woman whose suffering was swallowed by silence. So if you're ever in a Malaysian village and catch the scent of plumeria turning fetid, run. Don't look back, and whatever you do, don't answer the sound of a baby crying in the dark. Some lullabies aren't meant to be heard by the living. Some witches live in caves or castles. Baba Yaga lives in a house that chooses its guests. Perched atop towering chicken legs, her hut spins and dances to face those who approach, its wooden beams creaking like the bones of some great beast. In Slavic folklore, few figures are as feared or as strangely revered as this iron-toothed crone, whose morality shifts like the wind through the birch trees. One moment, she's grinding human bones in her mortar and pestle. The next, she's offering wisdom to lost souls brave enough to ask the right questions. She isn't just a villain or a helper, she's a force of nature, as unpredictable as the Russian winters she's said to command. The hut itself is a masterpiece of folkloric dread. Fence posts topped with glowing skulls light the path to her door, while disembodied hands serve as latches, twitching to life when intruders draw near. Artist Ivan Bilibin captured her domain perfectly in his illustrations. Gnarled trees claw at a blood-red sky, and the hut's chicken legs bend as if ready to sprint into the forest. But the true horror lies in its sentience. The hut doesn't just move, it judges. In some tales, it refuses to open for the unworthy, leaving them to the wolves. In others, it turns its back entirely, forcing seekers to plead for entry, their voices trembling. The message is clear. Baba Yaga's world operates by rules older than human notions of right and wrong. Yet for all her terrifying whimsy, Baba Yaga's role in Slavic tales defies simple categorization. She's a paradox, often testing heroes with impossible tasks. In Vasilisa the Beautiful, she sets the young girl to work sifting poppy seeds from ashes, a chore meant to break her spirit. But when Vasilisa persists, Baba Yaga rewards her with a fire-skulled lantern, a tool that later destroys her wicked stepmother. Here, the witch isn't just a monster, she's a crucible burning away weakness. Similarly, in The Frog Princess, she aids the hero only after he proves his mettle, handing him a magical spindle to reclaim his enchanted bride. These stories paint her not as evil, but as a gatekeeper of fortunes, dispensing rewards or punishments based on a logic mortals can't always grasp. What makes Baba Yaga endure isn't just her grotesque whimsy, it's what she represents. To the ancient Slavs, she embodied the untamed wild, a reminder that nature isn't cruel or kind, it simply is. Farmers left offerings at the forest's edge to appease her, while mothers warned children that straying too far might invite her bony grasp. Yet she's also tied to the sacred. Some scholars link her to a pre-Christian goddess of fate, her spinning mortar symbolizing the cycle of life and death. Even her chicken legs suggest a liminal being, part human, part creature, straddling the worlds of the living and the dead. Modern retellings continue to twist her legend. Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book reimagines her as a sly, dancing teacher with a penchant for riddles, while Hellboy comics depict her as a literal force of destruction. Yet the original tales still whisper through Slavic villages, where elders swear the creak of trees in a storm isn't just wind. It's Baba Yaga's hut turning, always turning, waiting for the next soul desperate or foolish enough to knock. Perhaps that's her true lesson. Not all doors should be opened, and not all answers come without teeth. There's something about the water, the way it pulls, the way it hides its depths beneath a shimmering surface, that makes it the perfect canvas for nightmares. In Scotland, they've long known this truth, spinning tales of creatures that don't just lurk in the waves but wear them like a second skin. Take the kelpie, for instance. At first glance, it might seem like just another horse grazing by the loch, its coat sleek and dark as wet slate. But get too close and you'll notice the water dripping from its mane never stops, no matter how long it's been on land. Lean in to touch its flank, and suddenly your fingers sink into hide that's too cold, too yielding, more like riverweed than flesh. By then, it's too late. The kelpie's back arches, its form shifting as it drags you into the depths, its laughter lost in the churn of the current. These stories weren't just told to frighten children away from treacherous shorelines, they were etched into the landscape itself. Near Loch Ness, yes, that one, there's a stone called the Kelpie Seat, where the creature was said to rest between hunts. Fishermen would avoid certain bends in the river where the water ran unnaturally still, knowing it meant the kelpie was waiting below, its hunger as endless as the tides. But what's truly chilling is how the legend adapts. In some versions, the kelpie takes human form, appearing as a handsome stranger with wet hair and seaweed tangled in his clothes, luring victims with promises of love or treasure. It's a reminder that danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, wearing a face you'd trust. Now, journey north to the Orkney Islands, where the sea's wrath takes a far more grotesque shape. The Nukkalavi isn't just a monster, it's an open wound. Imagine a horse and rider fused into one grotesque mass, its skinless body pulsing with exposed tendons and veins, its breath reeking of rotting fish. Unlike the kelpie, which hides its nature, the Nukkalavi flaunts its horror. It doesn't bother with deception. It simply rides out of the waves on nights when the moon is thin, bringing blight to crops and plague to livestock. Its very presence poisons the air, turning fresh water brackish and withering grass beneath its hooves. The Nukkalavi's origins are steeped in pure, unfiltered dread. Orcadian folklore describes it as the last of its kind, a remnant of some ancient malevolent race that predates humans. There's no bargaining with it, no clever tricks to send it away, only the fragile protection of running water which it cannot cross. Villagers would line their doorways with burn water or charms made from kelp, praying the creature wouldn't slither from the surf to claim them. But the most unsettling detail: it has no skin because it shed it long ago, a symbolic rejection of anything resembling humanity. The Nukkalavi isn't just a predator, it's a manifestation of the sea's indifference, a thing that thrives on suffering because suffering is all it knows. What binds these two horrors together isn't just their aquatic realm, it's the lessons they carry. The kelpie teaches distrust of beauty, a warning that even the most inviting waters can drown you. The Nukkalavi, though, is a darker parable. Some forces aren't just dangerous, they're actively malicious, reveling in ruin. Both creatures speak to the universal truth that the sea doesn't care for human lives. It gives and takes as it pleases, and sometimes it sends its nightmares ashore to remind us of our place. So the next time you stand by a lock or watch the tide roll in, listen closely. That splash might just be a fish, or it might be something far older, far hungrier, remembering the taste of human fear. Either way, it's best to keep your distance unless you fancy learning firsthand why these stories have lasted so long. Imagine a creature so skilled in deception that it could wear your loved one's face, speak in their voice, even cradle your child, right before sinking its fangs into your throat. In the ancient epics of Hindu mythology, few beings embody treachery like the Rakshasa, a demon whose very existence is a war against cosmic order. Born from the breath of Brahma when the creator god succumbed to his own anger, these shape-shifting horrors don't just kill, they corrupt, turning sacred rituals into bloodbaths and twisting truth into lies. Their name itself means the destroyer, and once you've crossed their path, you'll understand why. The Mahabharata burns with their presence. Take the tale of Baka, a Rakshasa who terrorized a village by demanding daily human sacrifices, preferably children, until the Pandava Prince Bhima shattered his spine like dry kindling. Or Hidimba, a forest-dwelling demoness who initially thirsted for human flesh but in a rare twist abandoned her nature after falling in love with Bhima, bearing him a son who'd later fight alongside heroes. These stories aren't just thrilling battles, they're cosmic chess games. Every Rakshasa represents Adharma, the collapse of moral law, while their slayers, like Bhima or Rama, are the living swords of divine justice. What makes the Rakshasa uniquely terrifying isn't its strength, but its intellect. Unlike mindless monsters, it thrives on strategy. In the Ramayana, the demoness Sapanaka doesn't attack Rama outright. She tries to seduce him, then frames Sita for crimes when rejected. Another, Maricha, transforms into a golden deer so enchanting that Sita begs Rama to chase it, luring him away so Ravana can kidnap her. These aren't blunt force horrors, they're psychological maestros exploiting desire, love, and trust as weapons. Their powers read like a nightmare's resume. Illusions so vivid they fool gods. The ability to grow or shrink at will, vanishing into shadows or looming like a storm cloud. Some could animate corpses, puppeteering the dead to demoralize the living. And their culinary preferences, let's just say they preferred their meals screaming. Ancient texts describe them feasting on battlefields, cracking bones for marrow like walnuts, their laughter echoing over the carnage. Yet for all their malevolence, Rakshasas are oddly bound by rules once they delight in bending. They can't enter homes uninvited, though they'll trick you into saying the words. They recoil from offerings made with pure intent, but will slaughter priests who waver in devotion. This duality makes them fascinating. They're forces of chaos, yet bound by the very cosmic laws they seek to unravel. Even Ravana, their most infamous king, wasn't purely evil. His 10 heads held immeasurable knowledge. His devotion to Shiva was genuine, but his pride. That was the crack through which darkness flooded in. Symbolically, the Rakshasa mirrors humanity's darkest potentials, greed that morphs into violence. Cunning untethered from ethics, their enduring presence in Hindu art and theatre, often depicted with bulging eyes, fanged grins, and skin the hue of spoiled meat, isn't just for frights. They're cautionary tales. When a Rakshasa disguises itself as a benevolent sage, it whispers a timeless warning. Evil rarely announces itself with a roar. Sometimes it arrives wearing a smile, offering gifts that stink of old blood. So the next time you hear a voice in the dark that sounds almost familiar, or feel an urge to trust too quickly, remember the Rakshasa. The battle against them wasn't just fought with arrows and swords, but with wisdom, the kind that sees through illusions to the rotten truth beneath. And in a world where deception wears 1,000 masks, that might be the most vital lesson of all. In the quiet villages of Malaysia and Indonesia, where the tropical air hums with the chirping of cicadas, some whispers are shared only in hushed tones, whispers about a child that never grows, never laughs, and never stops obeying. This is the Toil, an undead infant spirit bound to serve its master through dark magic. Unlike other supernatural beings that haunt out of malice, the Toil is a twisted tool, created deliberately by those desperate enough to bargain with the shadows. The ritual to summon one is as chilling as it is precise. A sorcerer, known as a bummo, must first obtain the corpse of a stillborn or aborted child. Under the cover of night, they recite forbidden incantations, binding the infant's soul to a physical form, often a grotesque, doll-like figure with jet-black eyes and needle-sharp teeth. The Toil is then fed drops of its master's blood to cement the bond, transforming it into a loyal but ravenous servant. Its tasks range from petty theft to sabotage, slipping unseen into homes to steal money or curse enemies. Some legends say it gnaws on furniture or spoils food, leaving behind tiny bite marks as its calling card. But here's the grim twist: the Toil is never satisfied. Like a neglected child, it demands constant attention. If its master fails to provide offerings, usually blood or milk laced with the master's own fingernail clippings, it turns on them. Stories tell of Toil strangling their creators in their sleep or driving them to madness with ceaseless, infantile wailing. This duality makes it a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked greed. The same creature that brings stolen gold can also bring ruin, a reminder that dark gifts always come with darker strings attached. Ethically, the Toil forces uncomfortable questions. Is it a victim or a villain, a tool or a tormented spirit? In some folktales, sympathetic villagers free a Toil by performing rites to lay it to rest, suggesting it's more prisoner than predator. Yet other accounts depict it as gleefully vicious, reveling in chaos. This ambiguity mirrors real-world tensions around power and exploitation. How far would someone go for wealth, and who suffers in the process? Modern sightings still surface, particularly in rural areas. Shopkeepers blame missing cash on tiny handprints left near safes. Parents swear they've seen something crouched in nurseries, watching their children with two old eyes. Whether myth or metaphor, the Toil endures because it embodies a universal dread, the fear of corruption, of innocence perverted into something monstrous. After all, what could be more terrifying than a child that should have been at peace, forced to walk the earth, not to play but to obey? There's a creaking sound in the dead of night, like old trees bending in a storm, but there are no trees. Just bones. In Japan, they call it the Gashado-kyoro, a skeletal giant pieced together from the remains of those who starved to death in forgotten famines. Towering over villages, its hollow eyes glow with spectral fire as it hunts, its teeth clacking with the sound of 1,000 unquiet dead. Unlike other yokai born from malice or magic, this horror emerges from pure collective suffering. Every rib in its towering frame belonged to someone who died with an empty belly, their final breath steeped in resentment. When it finds a victim, it doesn't just kill, it snaps them between its teeth like a twig, savoring the feast they were denied in life. The Gashido-kyoro's origins are steeped in historical tragedy. During Japan's war-torn Sengoku period and the brutal Edo-era famines, mass graves dotted the countryside, their dead buried without rites or remembrance. Folklorists trace the legend to these unmoored spirits, their anguish fusing into a single, ravenous entity. It's said you can hear the Gashido-kyoro coming by the ringing in your ears, a high-pitched whine warning of its approach. By the time you see it, it's too late. Your fate is sealed between jaws built from the bones of the abandoned. Now sail west to the fjords of Scandinavia, where the dead don't just walk, they fester. The Draugr, Norse mythology's answer to the zombie, is a far cry from the shambling corpses of modern pop culture. These are corpses swollen with supernatural strength, their skin blackened like old leather, their breath reeking of rotting fish and grave soil. Unlike the Gashido-kyoro, born of communal despair, the Draugr is a singular terror, often the vengeful spirit of a warrior or wronged villager. They guard their burial mounds with savage jealousy, slaughtering grave robbers and splintering shields like kindling. Some tales describe them as shape-shifters, capable of growing to monstrous sizes or oozing through cracks in stone. The Draugr's power lies in its connection to the grave goods it hoards. In Viking tradition, burying weapons, ships, or treasure with the dead wasn't just ceremonial, it was pragmatic. These items tethered the deceased to the afterlife, but if disturbed, they fueled the Draugr's wrath. The Grettir's saga recounts how the hero Grettir battled Glomma, a Draugr whose cursed corpse could drain the life from men with a single glance. Even after decapitation, Glomma's head retained its malevolence, his eyes burning with unearthlight as Grettir hurled it into a wall. Contrast these horrors and you uncover two stark philosophies of death. The Gashido-kyoro is a manifestation of societal failure, a nightmare woven from collective neglect. Its existence indicts the living for abandoning the desperate. The Draugr, meanwhile, is individualism taken to the grave, a refusal to let go, a violent cling to ownership. One represents the terror of being forgotten, the other, the horror of being unable to forget. Art brings them to life in chilling ways. Yuki-onna prints depict samurai futilely slashing at the Gashido-kyoro's ankles, their blades passing harmlessly through ancient bone. Norse carvings show Draugr ripping apart intruders, their muscles taut with otherworldly vigor. Imagine these images side by side, the skeletal titan born of hunger, towering over cherry blossoms, and the corpulent undead Viking, its tomb lit by stolen gold. Both are warnings, but from opposite ends of the human experience, one born of absence, the other of excess. So the next time you feel a chill when passing a cemetery or hear an unexplained rattle in the night, consider which legend feels closer to the truth. Is death something that gnaws at us from the outside, or does it fester within, waiting for a chance to rise? Either way, the dead have stories to tell. And some of them refuse to stay buried. On misty hilltops and in the dead of autumn nights, when the boundary between worlds grows thin, the puka makes its presence known. This shape-shifting trickster of Celtic lore defies easy categorization, neither fully benevolent nor wholly malicious. It exists in a space of delightful, dangerous ambiguity. One moment, it might appear as a sleek black horse with glowing golden eyes, luring travelers onto its back only to vanish into the fog, leaving them stranded miles from home. The next, it could take the form of a goat with curling horns, a rabbit with unnaturally long teeth, or even a shadowy figure with the ears of a hare and eyes that flicker like candle flames. The puka is chaos incarnate, a reminder that nature isn't tame, and neither are the spirits that dwell within it. What sets the puka apart from other legendary creatures is its mercurial morality. Unlike demons that seek destruction or guardian spirits that offer protection, the puka operates on whim. In some tales, it leads children astray in the woods, cackling as they stumble over roots. In others, it leaves gifts of silver coins or whispers warnings of coming storms to those who show it respect. This duality is deeply tied to the Celtic reverence for balance. The puka doesn't exist to punish or reward, but to test, to disrupt, and occasionally to amuse itself at humanity's expense. Farmers knew the puka best, especially during Samhain, when the harvest's end blurred the line between the living and the dead. It was said the creature could bless or blight crops with a single breath, turning ripe grain to dust or molding fruit to sweet perfection. To appease it, rural families left puka's share at the edges of their fields, a handful of late-season berries, a cup of fresh milk, or the last sheaf of corn tied with a red ribbon. Those who forgot this offering might wake to trampled stalks or find their livestock spooked and circling in confusion, but those who honored the tradition, they'd swear their yields were richer, their soil inexplicably fertile. The puka's influence lingers in modern celebrations. In parts of Ireland, Halloween is still called Puka Night, a time when mischief reigns and masks are worn not just to scare, but to mimic the spirit's many faces. Even Bram Stoker drew from its legend in The Mystery of the Sea, where a shape-shifting horse carries a protagonist into the supernatural. The puka endures because it's more than a folktale. It's an embodiment of the untamed wild, the unpredictable laugh in the dark, the thrill of not knowing whether the rustle in the bushes is danger or delight. So if you ever find yourself on a lonely road at twilight, and the wind carries a sound like laughter mixed with hoofbeats, don't run. Toss a bit of bread or a shiny trinket into the hedgerow, tip your hat and walk on. The puka remembers kindness, and it never forgets a slight. In the sweltering nights of South Africa's townships, where the air hangs thick with the scent of dust and defiance, parents still whisper warnings to their children. Don't leave your shoes under the bed. Don't sleep too close to the floor, and if you hear scratching in the walls, don't look, pray. The Tikalosh is listening. This dwarf-like creature, no taller than a child, with ragged fur and eyes like smoldering coals, is no mere folktale, it's a weapon. According to Zulu tradition, the Tikalosh is summoned by witches, molded from clay and dark magic to carry out their vendettas. It slithers into homes through cracks, its breath reeking of rotting meat, its fingers tipped with nails like rusted needles. But its true power lies in its cunning. It doesn't just kill, it torments, stealing breath from sleepers, souring milk, and knotting hair into impossible tangles. The Tikalosh's origins are deeply entwined with societal tensions. During apartheid, stories of the creature exploded in urban areas, particularly among black communities living under the strain of poverty and oppression. Some scholars argue these legends served as metaphors for unseen threats, police informants lurking in shadows, or the gnawing fear of betrayal in tightly knit neighborhoods. A laborer might blame a sudden illness on a Tikalosh sent by a jealous rival, rather than admit the tuberculosis ravaging his lungs came from the mine's toxic air. The creature became a scapegoat for suffering too immense to name, its presence a way to make the intangible horrors of apartheid feel tangible, something that could, in theory, be fought. Protection against the Tikalosh is as inventive as the creature itself. Traditional healers or sangomas prescribe charms made from goat horns filled with herbs or strings of beads soaked in protective oils. Bricks painted with white crosses mark doorways as forbidden territory, while some families still raise their beds on cinder blocks, a practical solution to keep sleepers just out of the Tikalosh's reach. The most potent deterrent, a broomstick placed beneath the mattress, its bristles pointing outward like a porcupine's quills. There's a grim poetry to these defenses, everyday objects transformed into shields against the supernatural, a testament to resilience in the face of fear. Yet the Tikalosh isn't just a relic of the past. Post-apartheid, it evolved, surfacing in modern crime narratives. gang leaders were rumored to employ witch doctors to unleash tikaloshes on enemies, their attacks mirroring real-world violence. In 2012, a Johannesburg court even heard testimony about a man who claimed his neighbor's tikalosh forced him to commit arson, a defense that, while dismissed, highlighted how deeply the legend persists. Contemporary artists reclaim the creature too. In Zakes Mdaw's novel The Heart of Redness, the tikalosh symbolizes the chaos of cultural collision, neither wholly good nor evil, but a reflection of the times. What makes the tikalosh endure isn't just its grotesque form, but its adaptability. It's a shapeshifter in every sense, a folktale that molds itself to fit new fears, from colonial subjugation to modern inequality. So the next time you feel a chill in a room with no drafts or wake with unexplained bruises, ask yourself, is it just the wind? Or is it something smaller, darker, kneeling beside your bed, waiting for you to forget the broomstick, the beads, the prayers, waiting for you to let your guard down just once? The waters of the Amazon pulse with secrets, and none are more seductive or deadly than the Encantado. At twilight, when the river turns to liquid gold, they emerge, pink dolphins, their backs gleaming as they arc through the water. But these are no ordinary creatures. With a flick of their powerful tails, they shed their skins and step onto land as breathtakingly beautiful men and women, their eyes holding the hypnotic depth of the river itself. The Encantado's song isn't just music, it's a lure drawing victims into the water where they vanish beneath the waves, never to return. What makes the Encantado legend so enduring is its deep roots in the Amazon's ecology. Indigenous tribes like the Tupi-Guarani revered the pink dolphin as sacred, believing them to be shape-shifting spirits guarding the river's balance. But this reverence came with warning. The Encantado represents nature's duality, its beauty and its brutality. Fishermen tell of dolphins that seem to smile before capsizing boats, or lovers who whisper sweet promises before dragging their bewitched partners into the depths. Some say the Encantado steals souls to replenish their own kind, a haunting echo of the rainforest's endless cycle of life and death. Now shift from the river's embrace to the moonlit villages of the Philippines, where a different terror takes flight, literally. The Manananggal is no ordinary vampire. When darkness falls, this female monster severs her own torso at the waist, sprouting bat-like wings from her lower half as she takes to the skies, leaving her legs standing grotesquely behind. Her quest, pregnant women and sleeping victims, whose unborn children or hearts she devours with a long, tubular tongue. The Manananggal isn't just a predator, she's a perversion of femininity, her very existence a nightmare inversion of motherhood and nurture. These two horrors might seem worlds apart, but they share a chilling symmetry. Both are deeply tied to their environments, the Encantado to the Amazon's life-giving yet deadly waters, the Manananggal to the Philippines' fraught history with colonialism and maternal mortality. Both also exploit desire, the Encantado through seduction, the Manananggal through the vulnerability of sleep, and both reflect societal fears of the untamed wilderness of female autonomy turned monstrous. The Encantado warns against the dangers of temptation, of losing oneself to the unknown. The Manananggal embodies fears of unchecked female power, her severed body a visceral rejection of traditional roles. Yet there's a tragic undercurrent to both legends. The Encantado is often depicted as lonely, cursed to wander between worlds. The Manananggal, in some tales, was once a woman wronged, her transformation born of betrayal. These aren't just monsters, they're cautionary tales, reminders of what happens when boundaries between human and animal, mercy and vengeance are breached. So the next time you hear a dolphin's cry or see a shadow detach itself from the moon, ask yourself, is it just the wind, or is it something older, hungrier, waiting for you to let your guard down? When death swept through medieval Germany in the form of relentless plagues, the fear wasn't just of disease, it was of what might rise afterward. Among the most grotesque figures to claw its way from Bavarian folklore is the Nachdara, a corpse that refuses to stay dead in the most unsettling way possible. Unlike the mindless zombies of modern fiction, this creature possesses a chilling awareness, gnawing not on flesh but on its own burial shroud, each muffled chew echoing through the grave like a perverse countdown. The name itself whispers its horror. Nachdara translates to after-devourer, a being that sustains itself by consuming the very fabric of its death, and in doing so steals the lives of the living. The Nachdara's ritual is methodical, almost calculated. German peasants believed the creature would lie motionless in its coffin, jaws working relentlessly to chew through its linen wrappings. But here's the twist: every stitch it swallowed was thought to drain the vitality of its surviving family members. A brother might sicken miles away, coughing blood as the shroud frayed in the grave. A mother would waste away, her strength siphoned by unseen teeth in the dark. This wasn't random violence, it was a sinister, targeted consumption, linking the fate of the dead to the living with threads of cursed cloth. Why this obsession with shrouds? Medieval Europe's terror of epidemics birthed the myth. When entire villages succumbed to the Black Death, survivors scrambled for explanations. How could so many perish so swiftly, sometimes in the same household? The Nachdara provided a grim answer: the dead weren't resting, they were feeding. This wasn't mere superstition, it was trauma given form. Mass graves, hastily dug and poorly consecrated, became breeding grounds for panic. A body found with its shroud tangled in its teeth, a natural result of decomposition, was proof enough of the demonic at work. The creature's other traits amplify its dread. Some accounts describe it with skin stretched taut like drum leather, its belly swollen with the breath it steals from the living. Others claim it can shapeshift, taking the form of a plague doctor or even a loved one to lure victims closer. Most chilling of all is its connection to suicide victims. Those who took their own lives were considered prime candidates to rise as Nachdaras, their unrest compounded by the sin of self-destruction. Churches mandated stakes through the hearts of suspected cases, or the placement of coins or stones in the corpse's mouth to halt its chewing. But the Nachdara's legacy isn't confined to dusty folklore. Modern scholars see it as a metaphor for the cyclical nature of grief and contagion. Every bite of the shroud mirrors the way loss consumes those left behind, strand by strand. The plague years weren't just about bacteria, they were about the unbearable weight of watching everything you loved disintegrate. The Nachdara embodies that helplessness, a monster that makes death itself feel alive, hungry, and personal. So the next time you hear an old tale about the dead walking, ask yourself, what were they really afraid of? The corpses in the ground, or the emptiness they left behind, chewing silently at the edges of the world? Some hungers don't end with the grave, and some horrors aren't buried deep enough. In the scorching red heart of Australia, where the sun beats down like a hammer on an anvil, the Aboriginal peoples tell stories not just to frighten, but to teach. Among the most curious of these warnings is the Yaramaiha, a creature that defies every expectation of what a monster should look like. Picture a small, hairless being no taller than a child, its skin the vivid red of sunset over Uluru, with an oversized head and a mouth that stretches too wide when it smiles. Its fingers end in round, suction cup tips perfect for latching onto skin, and its bulbous eyes gleam with a hunger that has nothing to do with meat. This isn't a predator that tears or crushes, it drains, slowly, methodically, like a living leech with the patience of the desert itself. The Yaramaiha doesn't chase its prey. It waits, dangling from the branches of fig trees in the outback's hidden gullies, where the shade offers false comfort to wanderers. When a child strays too far from their family's campsite, lured by curiosity or the promise of ripe fruit, the creature drops onto their shoulders with a soft, almost playful thud. Then comes the horror, not teeth or claws, but those suctioned fingers latching onto skin, drawing blood so gently the victim might not even notice until they feel the weakness seeping in. The Yaramaiha doesn't kill quickly. It toys with its meals, letting them go only to stalk them again, each encounter leaving the victim paler, drowsier, until they're too exhausted to run. Some versions of the tale say the creature swallows its prey whole, only to spit them back out, smaller and weaker each time until they become like it, red, grinning, and eternally hungry. But beneath the grotesque imagery lies a profound lesson. The Yara Ma'iha, who isn't just a bogeyman, it's a manifestation of the land's unforgiving nature, a teacher wrapped in nightmare. Aboriginal storytellers used the creature to instill caution in children, reinforcing the importance of staying close to home in a world where a wrong turn could mean dehydration, venomous bites, or worse. The outback doesn't forgive carelessness, and neither does the Yara Ma'iha, who, its methodical feeding mirrors the slow, insidious danger of getting lost in the wilderness, where the sun and thirst work together to drain a person's strength long before death arrives. There's a peculiar irony to its design, too. Unlike the sleek, terrifying predators of European folklore, this being is almost absurd in appearance, frog-like, comical even until you understand its purpose. The Yara Ma'iha, who doesn't need to be fearsome at first glance because the real lesson isn't about the monster, it's about the choices that lead you to it. Stray too far, ignore the warnings of elders, and even something that looks harmless can become your undoing. The creature's red skin mirrors the earth, a constant visual reminder that the land itself is alive, watching, and not always kind. Modern retellings sometimes soften the legend, turning the Yara Ma'iha into a quirky cryptid for travelers' tales. But in its original context, it was never meant to entertain. It was a survival guide woven into story, a way to make the consequences of disobedience visceral. Even today, in remote communities, parents might murmur about the red figure in the trees when children wander too close to the bush's edge. The threat isn't just supernatural, it's a shorthand for the very real dangers lurking in a landscape that demands respect. So the next time you hear a rustle in the branches above, ask yourself, is it just the wind, or is it something older, something red, waiting to remind you that not all lessons come with words? Some come with suction-cupped fingers and a smile too wide for comfort. The Yara Ma'iha, who hasn't faded into history, it's evolved, its crimson skin now splashed across contemporary indigenous art, and its warning whispered in classrooms and galleries alike. In the hands of modern Aboriginal storytellers, the creature leaps from folklore into fresh mediums while keeping its ancient lessons intact. Take the vibrant canvases of artist Sally Scales, a Pitjantjatjara woman, where the Yara Ma'iha who dangles from neon-bright fig trees, its exaggerated fingers stretching toward unsuspecting dots of white paint, tourists perhaps, or children glued to smartphones, oblivious to the land's dangers. These paintings aren't just art, they're updated survival guides translating ancestral wisdom for an age where the wilderness isn't the only thing that can make you lose your way. Elders like errant cultural custodian Elaine Peckham still recount the legend at community gatherings, her voice sharpening when she mimics the creature's gulping laughter. Kids today think it's just a scary story, she says, but that red little devil, he's the reason my grandkids don't wander off when we're gathering bush tomatoes. The details shift subtly for new audiences, sometimes the Yara Ma'iha, who lurks near abandoned mineshafts instead of fig trees, or targets teens who ignore keep out signs, but the core remains unchanged: respect the land or the land will teach you respect. Even Australian cinema has given the legend new fangs. In the indie horror Red Ground, the creature stalks hikers who desecrate sacred sites, its suction-tipped fingers leaving telltale bruises like love bites from hell. Director Warwick Thornton, a Kaitatai man, insists the film isn't just entertainment. That little red guy's the original accountability coach, he jokes then sobers. Colonizers called our stories primitive, but who's laughing now? Climate change, wildfires maybe. If more people had listened to the Yara Ma'iha, whose lesson about greed, we wouldn't be choking on smoke every summer. The legend thrives because it's elastic, stretching to address modern anxieties while staying rooted in tradition. In remote communities, parents slip the creature into conversations about online safety. Don't chat to strangers. What if they're like Yaramaiha, who sweet-talking you into trouble? At Sydney's Bangarra Dance Theatre, performers contort their bodies into the creature's distinctive crouch, their movements a visceral reminder that some dangers don't vanish with technology. Even TikTok hasn't escaped its grasp. Yaramaihoho videos alternate between spooky campfire tales and earnest tutorials on bush survival. The comments full of city kids marveling at how a scary story could double as a survival manual. What makes this legend endure isn't just its eerie imagery, it's the uncanny way it bridges generations. A grandmother painting the creature's likeness onto a school fence isn't just preserving culture. She's weaponizing it, using that wide red grin to keep kids safe from traffic or drugs or the crushing boredom that leads to bad decisions. The Yaramaiha who may feed on the careless, but in a way it also nurtures its endless hunger, ensuring the next generation never forgets who came before or the land that holds them all. So the next time you see something red out of the corner of your eye, whether in the bush or a graffiti-strewn alley, maybe don't dismiss it as imagination. Some lessons wear many skins and some teachers never really die. The legends we've explored, from the blood-draining Chupacabra to the shroud-chewing Nachdara, might seem worlds apart, but they share a haunting common thread. They're all answers to the unanswerable. When a child vanishes near a river, it's easier to blame La Llorona than to confront the randomness of drowning. When a village collapses under plague, the Nachdara makes sense of senseless suffering. These stories persist because they transform the chaos of existence into something with edges, something we can name and, in naming, momentarily control. Fear of the unknown is the oldest theme tying these tales together, but the way they manifest reveals deeper layers. The Dybbuk isn't just a ghost, it's a manifestation of guilt, a physical reminder that the past can strangle the present. The Wendigo isn't merely a monster, it's the embodiment of unchecked greed, a warning that consumption without consequence is a myth. Even the playful puka serves a purpose. Its chaotic whims mirror nature's indifference, teaching respect for forces beyond human dominion. These legends aren't just scary stories, they're the psychological and ethical scaffolding of entire cultures, carved into the collective memory through repetition and ritual. Globalization hasn't diluted these myths, it's amplified them, remixing ancient fears for modern anxieties. The Aswang's evolution is a prime example. Once a rural Filipino cautionary tale, it's now a viral metaphor for political corruption, with social media users dubbing crooked officials Aswangs in suits. Similarly, Japan's Yuki-onna has leapt from Edo period scrolls to anime like Demon Slayer, her icy beauty repackaged for audiences who have never seen a snowstorm. These stories are no longer confined to their birthplaces, they've become global currencies of dread, adaptable enough to reflect new fears while retaining their primal core. Horror cinema is the clearest mirror of this transformation. Consider The Ring, which took Japan's vengeful onryo spirit and draped her in static-filled televisions, weaponizing modern technology just as the original Sadako weaponized Wells. Or The Babadook, where an Australian children's book monster becomes a metaphor for depression, its inkai claws scratching at the edges of grief. Even the humble Jiangshi got a Hollywood makeover in rigor mortis, its hopping gait reimagined with CGI fluidity. These films don't just retell legends, they reanimate them, proving that a story about a drowned woman or a hungry corpse can be as relevant today as it was 500 years ago. What's truly fascinating is how these tales mutate when cultures collide. Mexico's La Llorona appeared in the Conjuring universe as a demonic nun, her familiar wail spliced with Catholic iconography for Anglo audiences. Meanwhile, Scandinavian trolls, once mountain-dwelling brutes of Norse lore, become eco-parables in Troll Hunter, their rampages framed as retaliation against industrialization. The legends aren't just surviving, they're evolving, growing new limbs to grasp fresh fears. So why do these stories cling so stubbornly to our imagination? Perhaps because they're more than entertainment, they're survival tools. The Tikalosh taught apartheid-era communities to mistrust unseen threats. The Gashadokuro reminded feudal Japan that forgotten souls can return as collective wrath. In an age of pandemics and climate crises, these narratives feel less like relics and more like roadmaps, charting the dark corners of human experience we're still learning to navigate. The next time you watch a horror film or hear an old folktale, listen closely. That whisper isn't just wind, it's the voice of 1,000 generations, asking if you've learned their lessons yet. Beneath the soil of ancient burial sites, the line between folklore and fact begins to blur. Take the so-called vampire graves unearthed across Europe. Skeletons pinned down with rocks wedged into their jaws, iron stakes driven through their ribs or scythes placed across their throats. These weren't the theatrics of superstitious villagers, they were calculated attempts to halt something terrifying. In Poland's Draugr cemetery, a 17th-century skeleton was discovered with a sickle positioned to decapitate it if it tried to rise. Nearby, another grave held a woman buried face down, her teeth pried out post-mortem. These practices reveal more than fear, they expose the very real trauma of epidemics. When plague ravaged villages, the dead often outnumbered the living, and mass graves bred paranoia. A body that bloated from decomposition might burst its shroud, spilling fresh blood. Rigor mortis could contort limbs into grasping poses. To terrified survivors, these weren't natural processes, they were signs of the undead. Halfway across the world, in Turkey's Cappadocia region, archaeologists stumbled upon tunnels lined with witch marks, crude carvings of labyrinths and spirals etched into stone. Local legends spoke of the dab, malevolent spirits that slithered through cracks to steal children's breath. But the tunnels weren't just hideouts for imagined demons. They were refuge chambers from real invaders, the etchings likely symbols of protection carved by desperate families during Mongol raids. The line between spiritual and earthly threats collapses when survival hangs in the balance. Even natural phenomena birthed monsters. The Greeks who coined Cyclops likely drew inspiration from dwarf elephant skulls found in Crete. Their single nasal cavity, mistaken for a massive eye socket, became the blueprint for one-eyed giants. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, drowning pools, once used to execute suspected witches, now reveal a grimmer truth. Many victims showed signs of advanced osteoporosis or dementia. Their confessions of flight or demonic pacts, likely the ravings of untreated illness. Perhaps most chilling is the Göbekli Tepe temple in Turkey, where carvings of headless humans and vultures suggest early ritualistic practices. Some scholars theorize these scenes inspired later myths of harpies or soul-eating demons, but the real horror lies in what they tell us about ourselves. Every stake through a heart, every stone in a mouth, is a testament to humanity's attempt to control the uncontrollable, to name the nameless dread that lingers when death comes too fast, too young, or too unjust. These artifacts aren't just relics of superstition, they're mirrors reflecting our oldest instinct to fight back against the dark, even when the enemy is only a shadow we can't outrun. From the icy grip of the Yuki-onna to the whispering malice of the Dybbuk, these 25 legends span continents and centuries, each a fingerprint of the cultures that birthed them. Some slithered from the shadows of forgotten plagues, like the shroud-chewing Nachdara. Others took flight from the raw terror of the unknown, the Aswang lurking behind a neighbor's smile, the Skinwalker wearing the pelt of something wild. What unites them isn't just their ability to terrify, but their uncanny persistence, clinging to the modern world like cobwebs in an old house. The Wendigo's hunger echoes in our age of excess. La Llorona's grief mirrors generations of stolen children. These stories aren't relics, they're mirrors, reflecting fears too primal to name. So here's the real question: which legend burrowed deepest under your skin? Was it the Gashadokuro, its bones rattling with the echoes of famine, or the Toyol, its doll-like hands sticky with stolen blood? Maybe the Encantado's haunting song, promising paradise before pulling you into the river's embrace. These tales belong to all of us now, reshaped by every telling, every shudder shared around a screen instead of a fire. That's the magic of folklore. It breathes, adapts, refuses to die. Now it's your turn. What shadows creep through your local lore? A ghostly hitchhiker on a desert highway, a cave where voices whisper in no language you recognize. Drop your stories in the comments. Let's build a living archive of the world's whispers. And if you're hungry for more mysteries, hit subscribe. The dark has endless stories left to tell, and trust me, we're just getting started.